much for joining us today. Appreciate you popping on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Erica. Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing us on to talk about it.
So, we met a while back, and you're originally from Long Island, and now you moved down south, right?
Yes. So we raised our kids on Long Island. We lived in Manhasset on the North Shore. And, my daughter graduated St. Mary's High School. My son from Charlotte, real local folks. And so after 20 some odd years of living there, we were empty nesters, and we decided it was time for a move. So I told my wife, it was kind of a joke in the family. I said, you can choose any state you want, but you see this thing called the jet stream south of that. That's if I'm moving, I never want to see 32 degrees Fahrenheit again. So when we looked at Florida, we said West Palm Beach and south. So that's what we did. We were just about at West Palm Beach, Florida. So, and it's now, it's now 70 degrees here.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You know what? We haven't been that bad here, so luckily.
No, that's a bit of a bad winter yet, right? So, but it was really, just getting away from that cold, but also it's just, it's for the long term of the company, it's a good business climate here. We have intentions to really build out big operations, and state of Florida is real good that way. So that's another reason to be here. But we're enjoying the life. My son moved down to North Carolina recently, about 2 years ago, and just got married in May, and his job asked him to come back to headquarters in Connecticut. So he's relocated back home now to New York, which is nice.
Wow.
Yeah. So they just moved back a couple weeks back, and they're back up in Connecticut, so kind of home to the New York area. So, but it's still home to us. So that's great.
Sure. Now you got your connections back here.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Good. So listen, you were what was your business before Totus?
So I've spent my entire life in scientific instrumentation.
Right.
I mean, I spent 35 years, everything from a salesman to a sales manager, vice president of sales and marketing of major global corporations, selling all over the world, selling all kinds of things that would take me a long time to describe, everything. You're calling on Nobel Prize laureates. I mean, really exciting, fun. It was a great way to live. I spent a lot of time in the semiconductor industry. We lived in Silicon Valley for a while. And, with all of that, I was still in that. I have a little company that's still operating that does some development of scientific instruments, an infrared spectrometer. And we still do that. But that's kind of a little niche sort of business. My son worked for me for a few years in that. And, we had a few people come and go. So that's like a little business on the side. And I kind of, I kind of figured that was going to be my way of easing out into retirement, and in the middle of doing that, and I was on a government research grant, so it was a kind of easy kind of lifestyle. And then my friend and now partner came along one day and had this crazy idea, and here I am working like I've never worked before. So, hey, that's life. We're enjoying it, and we're something good. We're doing something fun and something really good.
Yeah. So tell us. I mean, it's really not scientific instrumentation.
But think about it. I worked in science my whole life. So 25 years or so ago, we had a few dogs die young, and I really got, really broke my kids' hearts, and it was tough. And, I started getting into this whole thing about the health of our dogs and the longevity of our dogs. And I got into the whole nutrition thing, and there's a whole, movement out there of better health for dogs. But 25 years ago, products like ours didn't exist. So all you could do was make your own dog. So I began making my own dog. And I did my research. We certainly had the internet by then. So I was doing my research, and I figured out what were good, healthy things to do for dogs, follow a lot of good directions. There were, vets would, integrative vets would be online talking about healthier foods for dogs. And what you started to realize was that this whole concept of formulated dog food, kibble and canned dog food, it was never made for the good of the dog, right? It was made as an extreme cost and convenience argument for dog owners. And so it's extremely low cost. It costs almost an irrelevant amount of money to feed a typical dog under kibble or canned. And you throw it on the shelf, you buy as much as you need for the next 6 months, you throw it in the cabinet, don't think about it. 2 scoops a day, 3 scoops a day, whatever it says, you give the dog, think about it. Unfortunately, while the cost of that is very low and the convenience is through the roof, the one thing that it was never was good for the dog. So the average dog in America was just getting sick. and getting obese and getting all kinds of inflammatory processes and living very short lives, right? And these chickens came over to roost, so to speak, in around the 1990s, 2000, we saw a real proliferation of companies who were trying to make kibbles better, better nutritional profiles in the kibbles. And indeed, they did that. And there are a lot of kibbles out there that have good nutritional profiles. Unfortunately, the very kibbling and canning process itself, though, is the worst part. So I can take the healthiest kibble or canned food in the world, chock it full of all kinds of nutrients. And when I do that final kibbling process, which we call extrusion, or the canning process called retort, I basically introduce chemical processes to create compounds that are very, very unhealthy for dog, called advanced glycation end products. So what we had to do 25 years ago to get around that was just make our own foods. And it's all stuff you buy at the grocery store, because the odd thing is people talk about dogs and they think of dogs like wolves, and there was a lot of marketing to make us think that way. They're not wolves. They're completely different species. And they need what we need. They have a very similar need to us. So the healthiest dogs were the dogs who for many, many 100,000 years were fed what we ate, right? Table scraps. They were healthy dogs. And so when you started 25 years ago wanting to give a dog a healthy alternative, it didn't exist in the market. There was no such thing as a dog food that was healthy for a dog, right? There were dog foods that were very convenient and cheap for humans, but they weren't good for the dog. So I just made my own food. And over the years, I learned a lot, and I learned all different things. And so I did develop a pretty good recipe. And then the next series of 20 some odd years, we had these wonderful dogs. And I was really a bit of an amateur dog trainer. So I was really particularly focused in how the dogs responded to the food, how they behaved. And now the idea that I lived my whole life in science and around scientists, I became very rigorous about this, really making very keen observations of what the dogs responded to, what ingredients they liked, what changed their moods, how did it affect, their energy level and training. So I, over the course of 25 years, I developed a pretty solid recipe. And all my dogs have eaten it their whole lives. And since feeding raw, and I was using raw food in those days, and since going on those diets, all my dogs started to live 15, 16 years, right? Big dogs. In our last lab was 16 when he passed away. He was 100 pounds his whole life. Big dog, big dog. Right now I've got 200-pound labs, and they're both young, but they'll probably live to be 16, 17 as well. It's this food, right? So, okay, so that's my history. And then throughout so I would have these friends who would come along and say, gosh, your dogs are so healthy. They're so well behaved. What do you, well, I feed this diet, and people would copy. I taught people how to make the food that I make, right? And I would just give them the recipe, help them out. And what I would use in those days was I would use small amounts of kibble to get these nutrients that you need for the dog that, you really have to get very, very sophisticated to get all of the nutrients they need in proportion in natural ingredients. The easiest way to do it is to take a few that are really important and supplement them. Well, that's what the kibbles do. So I would use a little bit of kibble really just to get at those kind of ingredients. And I would teach people to do the same. And so along comes my partner, Rob Coloralfi, who we know here on Long Island. We've become, acquaintances and friends. And I'm telling him the story. And unbeknownst to me, we started into a whole conversation one day where Rob is like obsessed with nutrition. He's got 6 children, and they eat like, all their food comes from, small Amish farmers and the only supermarket they'll entertain is Whole Foods, this lifestyle. And Rob, you got to hear his stories on, like, the doctor told him he's going to need eyeglasses. He went on and did research and nutrients that are good for eyes, and he just stocked up on those. And 10 years later, he's still not wearing glasses. And his AFib in his heart was the one that's got him started on all this. And now it's been everything from, a cancer in the family that's been treated, everything through nutritional treatments, as well as alternative medicines and Western medicines and Asian medicines. He puts, if it works, it puts it into play, and it starts with good nutrition. So he started reacting to my diet, and he wanted to do it for his dogs. But then he started to say, why didn't you use this, or why didn't you use that? I don't know. That's not I just read on the internet the best stuff. I'm not a nutritionist. And I just started with a really good nutritional profile. I was really about how the dogs respond to the food. That's where I was coming from. But he said, no, if you added, he gave me a few ingredients, this will reduce inflammation. This will be antioxidant. Okay. So he and his wife, Julie, went in and started tinkering with my recipe, adding a few things and changing a few things, because then he said, hey, let's start a company and make this. I was like, oh, no, I like, at this stage of my life, I've got my little company. It's kind of nice. It's quiet. It's,
Yeah.
oh, come on, this could be really something. We could really do something big. So 2 years we discussed it, really talked about it before we actually launched it. And what we talked about, Erica, was that, there's really not a great option out there for people who want to feed their dogs healthy. There are a few fresh foods out there. We saw that was out there, and they're good products. But there's something still missing out there. There's a paradigm that needs to move and change. And so I said, okay, I said, let's do it. So we started up about 3 years ago, but we didn't know anything about the business, right? So the first thing we had to do was just research the business, who's doing what are their programs, what are their marketing programs, what do they say, what are the arguments, what do the kibble manufacturers say when you say that their foods are unhealthy? So we research all of this, and we came a long way. 2 years, we learned everything about the business. We learned all kinds of things. So then January of last year, we said, it's time. We're going to start selling this stuff. Oh, by the way, in the process of that 3 years, we went through the consultation with several different nutritionists, one of whom is still on staff with us now. And he's got his PhD in small animal nutrition from Ohio State, about his good academic credential you could get for this. He's wonderful. And he's so smart, and he knows like what the dogs like. He's such a smart guy. So it was my recipe with Rob's nutritional understanding of things with a PhD scientist nutritionist to make it all right? To make it all perfectly scientific and commercially viable, right? So we did all that. We said January last year, we said, we're ready with the food. We've built a crude website. We've got a shipping thing going, and we finally found a manufacturer. That was the hardest part. That's what took us the entire 2 years, because these have to be made in factories to make human food, because it's nothing like making dog food. You can't go to the massive dog food industry. They don't have the kind of equipment and the kind of processes to make this food, because it's really more like a human food. So ultimately,
let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So did you like go to like small fairs, or sometimes you have a table, you buy a table and you sell it. I mean, were you doing a little test market before you just jump into manufacturing?
No. What we did was different. Instead of, we have done that, but our test marketing really was all these people who liked my food and wanted to buy it. So we started a test market, kind of a friends and family test market, right? It was people we kind of knew. And the strategy was, let's sell to people we know, because the first few, we're going to blow the deliveries. The food's going to not get there in time, or the manufacturing is going to be right, or, we're going to have these problems. And sure enough, we did. So we called them soft launches. So January last year, we had one customer, right? One customer that actually signed up and bought, and the delivery was okay. The website didn't really process the order properly. It broke. We had to go in and figure out what's wrong with the website, and all that stuff. And so then we took on 5 more, and then everything broke. And then we took on, we fixed that up. But these were all people we could call and talk to, and, see how things are going. And they were kind of, they were having fun that they were part of this thing, right? So they weren't going to bail on us, right? So from 5, we went to 12, then 15. And remember, these are subscriptions. So once they're on with us, they're on with us. And they keep getting food every 2 or 4 weeks. So that's what we did, Erica. We've done like 7 of what we call these soft launches. And we've got 50 subscribers out there now. And it's smooth. It's all now smooth. It works like a charm. So like first we had 1 box size. Then we found out it was going half empty half the time, and we were getting killed on shipping charges. We were like going to go under, we would never make money. So we figured out so now we've got this very complex matrix of how many packs of food are they getting, which size boxes and which combinations, how do they get packed in, how do they get packed for maximum freshness so that when they ship, they stay good and cold. So they're good and cold when they get there, because it's a fresh food. It has to be cold when it gets there so we can put it back in the freezer. And so we spent 7 soft launches. So that's how we did it. Now, we did a little bit of the fairs and things like that too, just to get a feel for it. But what we were really doing was grabbing one customer at a time through people we knew, through a couple of partnerships we got into. We've got a really good breeder of labs. My labs come from her, and a really good trainer and a really good vet down here in Florida who's got a real nutritional expertise. And so through them and through our own contacts, we got a few customers here and there so that we could fix the website, get it smoothed out, make sure it was ready for scaling, make sure that our manufacturing was right, make sure that our distribution. So we manufacture it in New Jersey, and then we ship it over to Long Island, and we ship out of Long Island, right? So in Hicksville, and that's our distribution center, right? And we've only got the one right now, and we're only really focused in Long Island and South Florida, where we've got the connections, and then we've got a vet down here that distributes for us and all that. And then we're going to start to expand and expand and expand. So right now we're really focused on sort of Long Island and the greater metro area, and the South Florida, greater Miami area. And again, from 50, we feel like now it's all state, right? It's all ready for scale. So now we're ready to go. And we're just out seeking investment right now. We're seeking our first initial round of investment. Rob and I did our bootstrapping so far. We've paid for everything so far out of our own pockets, and that little bit of cash flow that comes in from sales. And we're saying now it's time to really launch. And so we're in a holding pattern, taking on a customer here and there as they come in, but we're really looking for investment so we go out on a full launch over the next 60 days or so.
I mean, it's amazing. And I feel like I know 3 years seems like a lot to some people, but that's really fast to start a business. It's really fast.
Yeah.
Even though you've had this recipe for a bit, it's been a while. But let's talk a bit about
the recipe was a bit of a shortcut, so that's why, But yeah, it's a long time. We had to learn. All the stuff we had to learn. I didn't know how food was made. I had no background in that, right? We know about dog food nutrition from a scientific level. We had to bring in the scientists,
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's interesting because pets are like people's kids. And so, they want to make sure that their pets are just as healthy as somebody else that's in their family. And I guess you can equate like to regular kibble or whatever to like a frozen food that we would eat, unhealthy, right. Lots of preservatives to keep it, alive forever.
Right. I say it this way. And I'd say it's sort of tongue in cheek. I mean, I don't want to be sort of crude about it, but if somebody says, well, my dog is like part of the family, which most people do say, I think about 70% of Americans identify with the concept that their pet is part of the family, which is great. I mean, that's wonderful. And so I say, okay, your pet's part of the family, your dog's part of the family. Okay, that's good. So tell me which uncle, when he comes over, you give him 3 bowls of Captain Crunch a day, out of scoops of something that's been sitting in the cabinet for 6 months, and that's his entire nutrition.
Right.
Which nephew do you do that to? Which child? Right? You don't. Right? So if we want to say that the dog is really part of the family, the thing that's been left out is the nutrition part. He is part of the family. He or she is part of the family, how they're loved, how they're cared for, the priority we put on them, the care we give them, all of that stuff. So it's not the people's fault that they're feeding this really unhealthy stuff as the entire diet, right? It's not. It's a paradigm that was intentionally started in the 1950s, and it probably has $1 trillion worth of marketing poured on it that this is the way you feed a dog. I kind of say, to me, I'd like to take dog food, capital D, capital F, and turn it into an industry and a sort of institution and indict that institution. And let's start talking about food for dogs, right? Yeah. And so that's what we're really trying to do. So our belief is that even the other fresh food makers out there, in my opinion, they've said, oh, that paradigm of kibble foods is fine for the rank and file market. But for you rich people, here's a really expensive option that's really a way to go. And frankly, fresh food is a lot more expensive than kibble canned food. That's what I said. The paradigm of cost convenience was unrealistic. And it was unrealistic. It was unrealistic to be healthy, but it is what it is. We are far more expensive than kibble food, as are all the fresh food makers. But we have to all figure out a way to fix that problem. Is there a way that we can get everybody on this kind of food for their dogs? If you've got good disposable income, and again, I like to say, we're not talking about, the difference between a Bentley automobile and a Toyota. We're talking about something much closer to the difference between Starbucks and diner coffee. And really, so it's, there's a couple of $100 a month you're going to spend on dog food if you've got multiple dogs or big dogs. That's a lot. But again, can people do that? Yeah. How can we help them do that? How can we get there? We want to go beyond just selling this fresh, healthy dog food, which there's enough people with disposable income out there that can do it when they see the argument. The argument's pretty simple. You want your dog to live 7 years, keep feeding him like that. You want him to live 12, 15, you got to do something different, right? People have enough disposable income when they come to that decision, they can get into a better food for their dogs, right? But how do we get past that small percentage market? How do we get a whole new paradigm of making your dog part of the family to include the nutrition, right? And so I think that's going to take some thinking over the years, right? So we're coming in now, we're fresh food and we're as good as everybody else and a little better than everybody else. So we'll get our market share, we'll get our company going and we'll be successful. But how do we move this whole thing, right? How do we move this whole paradigm to something else? I don't think anybody else is really thinking of that or doing that.
Listen, Mike, what about the idea, though, that feeding your dogs properly, just like giving them exercise and so forth, will keep them healthy, and then down the line, you're saving on, doctor bills for the dog, right? You're not saying it, you're taking them to the vet too many times,
right. That's absolutely true. And many of the companies will make that claim. I tend not to say too much about that just because, you can do all the right things and feed your dog the right way and they can get cancer or they can get hit by a car, right? And so there's trauma that costs a lot when your dog is injured, and there's disease that's just disease. It didn't come from the food. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing I'll tell you about my dogs is we find excuses to go to the vet because we like to see the vet every so often and we just have no reason to go. They never get sick. In 25 years of feeding food to dozen or more dogs, I can tell you diarrhea, constipation, count on one hand the number of times across 20 dogs in 25 years. Sickness, illness, nothing. We just don't have problems. Hip dysplasia, all those things. I'm not making medical claims here.
Right.
I'm just saying that's what I've been feeding, and my dogs just don't get sick. They don't. And we'll literally take the dog to the vet for like a pimple on the skin just because we want to see the vet. And we just really never have a reason to go. Other than, we do certainly vaccinations, the puppy series and all that. But I'm saying like my adult dogs, years and years, they don't see that. Why? There's nothing going wrong. We try to control the behaviorals. So you're not running out and getting hit by cars and things. So we don't have a lot of that going on either. But the real key is, yes, you're right. There will be fewer vet bills. But more important than that, much more important than that, is what about the mental anguish when they do get sick? I mean, they are like a family member. There's no doubt. They are a family member, and people grieve when they get sick, when they die, right? And so why bring that upon yourself? The food is a big difference maker. Just 50 customers. So that's a little bit beyond anecdotal. My data yet. But I can't tell you, again, no medical claims, but if I could tell you all the comments, the limp went away, the hair came back, the skin itch stopped, he stopped scratching his ears, his eyes look better, they're less watery, he's lost some weight, which I wanted him to lose, he's gained some weight, which I needed him to gain, the gait's better, they're happier, they're more alert, on and on and on. And it's true.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the name Totus.
Okay.
What does it mean?
So my partner and his wife are they're music people, and they do a lot with like traditional music, Gregorian chant and things, and so I myself I'd studied Latin in college, and so we were kicking around names, and we were like, I think it was Julie who said it, my partner Rob's wife, and she said, "Wait a second, but this is really for the health of the whole dog. I like the word totus, everything, totally. I like it too." So, and then we started talking about it, so we all have some background in dealing in Latin. So we said, "Oh, that's a really nice word." And the other thing, from a legal perspective, it's interesting if you use a old language like totus, total dog. Like if we did that in any other modern language, we would be having to watch our copyrights for total dog and things like in English in different language. Once it's in Latin or an ancient language, you don't have to worry about any of that too. So it's a nice little convenience, but we love the name. And then with the long O sound, long accent mark over the O, so it's Totus, to make sure, people would pronounce it rapidly. My instruments company is called Actus, A-C-T-U-S, which similarly it means action, because we do something, it's an action-oriented instrument. And they're unfortunately, it's just become known as Actus, which is really not pronounced properly. So we said,
That's how I said it. That's how I said it. And I was saying Totus. So I got it all.
So we said, let's get Totus right from the beginning. So we put the accent mark in there. And whenever we say, we always say it correctly, Totus, right? And people go, now, that's Totus. Oh, yeah, dude, yeah. So it's fun. And it's something to talk about, then, right?
Sure.
Interesting. So I think it was a good choice. I think it was a really great moment of genius on Julie's part.
Now you got to name a dog Totus, though.
And we do. We own a domain called the Total Dog. And we're going to build that out at some point in different, dog care things and things like that, because that's what it really does.
Got it.
Yeah.
So listen, we have a few minutes left.
Yeah.
Tell us about like how people can, learn about this product, order this product, subscribe. Give us a little bit of that info.
Sure. So our domain is totusdog.com. So TOTUS, that's our name, totusdog.com. Okay. And they go on there, and there's all kinds of information there about the nutritional properties, about the ingredients of our food. You can go on and subscribe. And what we do when you order a fresh food like this, instead of just giving you an amount of food based on your dog's size, what a lot of people don't think about is that a dog's nutritional needs can vary the same size dog 3 times, one dog to another, or 1/2 of what another dog has. So we asked you 4 questions about your dog: energy level, size, activity level, and age and neuter space status, all the things that affect diet. And then we give you an amount of food that you need, and then we tell you this is what the subscription will cost, this is what you'll get in a box at that rate, either 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and then you place the order. Now, what we always tell people is that's just a starting point. Even at that, we're only so accurate. The way you feed your dog is, how does your dog? Does your dog seem happy? They seem full? They seem contented? Are they getting chubby? Are they getting skinny? That's how you do it, because things change, and dogs' metabolisms go through changes. And you, unbeknownst to you, you were a lot busier with your dog the last 2 weeks than you've been lately. And the dog needs a little extra food this week, and you're going to see it in that he's a little hungrier and she's looking a little thin. That's how you really do it. But we give you a good start point. That'll be a good nutritional basis for the dog to eat the right amount of food. So you just come on our website, go through a couple of questions, and you set up a subscription, set up an account, and there you go. And you can always reach out. We have totusdog.com as our domain, and I'm Michael at totusdog.com, and Rob is Rob at totusdog.com. You can always email us and ask us any questions. I get a lot of emails where people ask questions about allergens and different things, and how do we deal with that. And one last thing, if you don't mind, I'll say, I said I did raw food for many, many years. And when you hear in the dog food world, people like me eat our own foods, raw. It's a big, big thing about raw food. But the real science is that it's not that raw food is so much better than cooked food. It's that in dog food, all the cooked food is cooked at temperatures that cross a threshold where they become unhealthy. If you cook the food below that temperature, which we do, we have this proprietary steam cook process we do, you get all the health benefits of raw food, right? So when you hear about raw food, and it's very ideological out there, people who are really into raw. I was in that world for 20 years. But what a lot of them don't understand is that you can cook the food, which makes it more tasty for the dog. There's hands down research that shows dogs like cooked things better than raw. Absolutely. You think raw meat, dog likes raw meat, cook that meat and it'll go after it twice fat. But you can keep it healthy by keeping under that temperature, and that's what we do. So we're even good for that. People who want to think raw diet. Yeah, this is raw diet without all the bacterial and freshness concerns of true raw. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Listen, it's been great learning about Totus. Got it right.
Yeah.
And it was really good talking to you too, and I appreciate it. And I hope, I wish you the best of success with it, for real. I think it's
Thanks
great.
so much, Erica, and best to everybody on Long Island. And so Rob's out there in Amityville. So anytime anybody needs him, he's there. Just email us, ask us a question, and we'll be there. We want to be the company that takes care of you. So
Great. Thanks so much.
thanks, Erica.